Welcome to the Lunchtime broadcast, where we highlight the news making waves ranging from current affairs, community stories, sports and economic news. Here are the news headlines. New wages apply to construction industry. Walvis Bay hosts World Oceans Day celebration, and Ongwediva hosts remembrance event in memory of the late President Dr. Geingob. I am Diana Master and this is NMH at 1. Midday news update coming right up.
Hi Melissa.
You look upset. Is everything okay?
A healthcare worker refused to attend to me because I visited the healthcare facility without a guardian.
Healthcare workers are not allowed to do that. This sounds like a job for your shield of survival.
Huh?
Your rights, they're your superpowers. Your shield of survival is your right to life, health, nutrition, shelter, and an adequate standard of living.
For more information, contact the Children's Advocate Namibia in the Office of the Ombudsman on 061 20 73 111. Send us an SMS on 20401. SMS costs 40 cents. You can also send us a message via our Facebook page. Remember, the services of the Children's Advocate are free of charge.
In our midday news update, speaking at a remembrance event held in honor of the late President Dr. Geingob in Ongwediva on Saturday, Vice President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah shed light on the late president's role in the attainment of the country's independence and how he led government under difficult circumstances. Have a look.
Of the permanent footprints of President Geingob, which obliged us to convene here, are a powerful testimony of a life of courage, sacrifice, a life well lived in service of the Namibian people, Africa, and humanity at large. And I can say this with confidence because I have been with him internationally before and after Namibia's independence. It is indeed fitting that we align the brick that will ensure that his legacy lives on, as the theme of this memorial lecture intends to do. You will agree with me that it's hard to find an entry point for a discussion about the legacy of President Geingob, particularly for a person who has known him for 49 years, 8 months. How do we narrow down the legacy of a leader who started his journey as a freedom fighter, a petitioner to the United Nations, and later SWAPO Party Director of Elections in 1989, that have seen the birth of our independence? Should we start with his journey on the eve of independence as a concessional chairperson of the Constituent Assembly, or as an effective founding Prime Minister of an independent Namibia? Or should I limit my reflection on his courageous and scholarly tenure as President of our Republic, which was shortly interrupted on the 4th of February this year? Irrespective of where we start and end, in all those roles, President Geingob made seminal contribution which merit memorization of his work in service of Namibia and humanity at large.
Visual News highlights local stories from across Namibia right after the break. Stay with
The
NMH
Ministry
at 1.
of Environment, Forestry and Tourism, in collaboration with the Namibia Tourism Board and the Ondonga Traditional Authority, will be hosting the Itotha Carnival at the Kangonde Sotpan in the Oshikoto region from 27 June to 1st July 2024. Expect a fun-filled weekend including traditional dishes, cookout competitions, totem parades, traditional games, horse riding, skydiving and quad biking. Accommodation facilities will be available at cost. The Itotha Carnival, celebrating our ancient heritage.
And now getting into today's visual news clips. World Ocean Day celebrations were held in Walvis Bay at Independence Beach on Friday. President Ngolo, speaking at the event, said Namibia's proximity to the ocean has enabled it to benefit from marine fishing and other water bodies, which contribute 5% to its gross domestic product, with revenues of 10 billion Namibian dollars annually.
Celebrated. I don't know why Comrade Mutoro have to go through all those stories. and on top of that, who care about them? People want a peaceful country. People want a country that produces fish. I'm sorry, Comrade Schneider, you and I are out of the game. Because we are ministers of agriculture and we are farmers. But today is World Ocean Day. That has to be celebrated. Therefore, the scenic location where we find ourselves this morning provides a fitting backdrop for the celebration of this most important occasion, World Ocean Day. As Namibians, as citizens of a seafaring and fishing nation among others, we observe and celebrate this day with keen interest under the theme catalyzing action for our ocean and climate. It is a day to reflect on the significance of our ocean, to renew our commitment to its preservation, its sustainable use, and to acknowledge the critical role the ocean plays in sustaining life on our planet. In this message to celebrate World Ocean Day last year, the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, remarked that, and I quote, "The ocean is the foundation of life. It supplies the air we breathe and food we eat. It regulates our climate and weather. The ocean is our planet's greatest reservoir of biodiversity."
You can catch the full video on our social media pages. Now stick with us. The newspaper review segment takes us into top stories in Namibia's daily newspapers right after this. Thank you for staying with NMH at 1. We now take a look at what the lead stories are in Namibia's daily newspapers. Namibian Sun reports on its front page that Vice President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah has characterized the tenure of late President Hage Geingob as tough, saying he was forced to make difficult and unpopular decisions to prevent the country from descending into a serious crisis. Although youth unemployment and poverty levels skyrocketed during his time in office, Nandi-Ndaitwah said the situation could have been worse today had Geingob not tightened the belt and implemented fiscal policies which made it possible for the 2014 Swapa Manifesto to be realized. Nandi-Ndaitwah Ndaitwah, who was the SWAPO presidential candidate in the looming November election, made the remarks during a remembrance event held in honor of Dr. Geingob, who died on the 4th of February. The event took place at the University of Namibia Jose Eduardo dos Santos campus in Ongwediva on Saturday night. On the paper's page 5, the High Commission of Malaysia launched a poultry barn project last week in collaboration with the Namibian Correctional Service via the Malaysian Technical Cooperation Program Alumni of Namibia. Donated to the Hardap Correctional Facility in Marienthal, the chicken barn will engage inmates in constructive activities where they will not only learn skills they will need after release, but also produce chicken and eggs for their consumption to complement their diet. Now, according to Republican, the government has announced a new list of minimum wages for the workers in the construction industry in the government gazette. This includes, among other things, that a security guard must earn 140 Namibian dollars and 91 cents for a 12-hour shift, a brickmaker 24 Namibian dollars and 39 cents per hour, and a laborer's minimum must be 80 Namibian dollars and 72 cents per hour. This is according to a collective agreement between the Ministry of Labour, Industrial Relations and Job Creation, the Federal for the Construction Industries of Namibia, and the Metal and Related Workers Union of Namibia. The paper's page 3 reports that the overwhelming majority of the Swakopmund municipality's annual budget is spent on operating costs. During a council meeting, it was revealed that approximately 578 million Namibian dollars, 84% of the municipality's budget for the 2024-2025 financial year, has been designated for operating expenses. Capital expenditure is 112 million Namibian dollars. The chairman of the municipality's management committee, Blasius Koraseb, emphasized that the municipal budget gives priority to expenses that are essential to promote development in Swakopmund. Now today, the Allgemeine Zeitung leads with an article focused on the energy symposium that the Forum for German-Speaking Namibians conducted during the weekend. Apart from Haifa, Namibia, that questioned why the Namibia Environmental Chamber was so quick in writing off the green hydrogen project as so-called red hydrogen, one of the speakers, Eckhard Friedrich, was able to shed light on the potential oil industry. He, however, focused mainly on the financial potential of oil extraction without delving into the carbon footprint. On its page 3, the Allgemeine Zeitung focuses on the Dagbreek school, which as part of its community is invariably treated as a marginal issue. The school has set its aim of promoting greater awareness of the plight of mentally and physically challenged people among the public at large. The aim is not only to highlight their challenges, but also to identify jobs in the private sector that can be filled by people with disabilities. We'll now take a quick ad break and continue with our newspaper review segment thereafter. The Namibian newspaper zooms in on Mario Joaseb, aged 22, one of the homeless people sheltered at the Commersdal Stadium, who told the paper they've been begging the government to hear their cries, but they keep falling on deaf ears. We do not see the need to vote when we live in freezing tents with holes and tiny blankets, he says. Joaseb and his fellow residents at the stadium in Windhoek have declared their refusal to vote until the government responds to their plight. On page 3, Walvis Mayor Melba Chodongoro and Omaheke Governor Ganate allegedly made a land donation deal involving a 250-hectare farm without ministerial and council approval. The Local Authorities Act states that donations should get prior approval in writing from the Minister of Urban and Rural Development Erastus Utoni and the Regional Council. Chodongoro and Ganate allegedly bypassed the council and Utoni during a meeting on the 11th of July 2023. Moving over to the front page of the New Era, Popular Democratic Movement President Makenri Vanani says his party is aiming to diminish the ruling SWAPO party's vote share to below 40%. Speaking at his party's Central Committee meeting in Opuwo on Friday, Vanani said the recent shifts in South Africa's political landscape, where the once dominant African National Congress has relinquished its majority after 3 decades, are a clarion call for democracy throughout Southern Africa. The ANC had dominated South Africa politics since winning in the first post-apartheid elections 30 years ago. On to page 3, Secretary to Cabinet George Sematta said state-owned enterprises should serve the government interests and contribute to the achievement of national developmental objectives. Sematta made the remarks during the Public Enterprises CEOs Forum held in Oshakati on Wednesday, saying SOEs are government institutions, and in the case of Namibia, they are owned by the government and their role is to represent the government in commercial endeavors. Sematta said most recently the government introduced generally accepted principles of corporate governance. It streamlined streamlined the legal framework, reviewed guidelines, and established policy frameworks and directives. Now, according to MarketWatch, the Open Budget Survey has praised Namibia for making improvements with regards to its budget transparency. Namibia now ranks third on the African continent in terms of budget transparency, amid suggestions that its ranking can still improve considerably. South Africa claimed the first position, followed by Zimbabwe in the latest OBS rankings. Namibia scored 54 out of 100 for transparency and 46 out of 100 for budgetary oversight. Reacting to the outcomes of the OBS, Finance Minister Ipumbushimi on Friday said Namibia subscribes to the OBS through the International Budget Partnership. Now, Namibia Local Business Association has issued a warning following the announcement of electricity tariff hikes. The details follow right after as we get into our economic news. Getting into our economic news, Namibia Local Business Association Vice President Kanu Amadila has issued a warning following the announcement of electricity tariff hikes, saying businesses are already struggling and the higher prices will continue to put them in a difficult position. Amadila added that electricity is no longer affordable for both businesses and the general public. Continuous electricity tariff hikes have killed and continue to kill businesses in Namibia. Electricity is no longer affordable in Namibia, both for domestic and international businesses, and it is a key component of every economic activity for strategic growth, Amadila argued. Amadila was responding to questions by Namibian Sun about the Electricity Controls Board's decision to approve NamPower's application to increase their tariff by 8%. The decision means electricity distributing companies will be forced to hike their tariffs to compensate for the high cost of electricity from NamPower. Amadila said the situation will worsen as countries such as Zambia and South Africa, from which electricity is imported, can no longer guarantee supply. He attributed the unaffordable electricity prices to government's failure to implement electricity generating initiatives such as the Epupa hydropower and Kudu gas projects. Now let's take a look at the economic indicators just before we bring you African news. The Namibian dollar trades at 23 Namibian dollars and 95 cents to the British pound, 20 Namibian dollars and 31 cents to the euro, $18 and 86 cents to the US dollar, and 2 Namibian dollars and 60 cents buys you 1 Chinese yuan. First, right, Namibia Limited stocks are on a downturn of 0.50%. Let's Go Holdings and Namibia Breweries Limited stocks are on an upturn of 2.50 and 0.03% respectively, while the rest maintained. Gold and platinum are down by 0.09% and 0.33% respectively, while copper and Brent crude oil are up by 1.06 and 0.32% respectively. Local index closed on an upturn of 0.12%, while overall index closed on a downturn of 0.05%. Stick around after the break. We expand beyond Namibia's borders to give you the latest news from the African continent here on NMH at 1.
Welcome to My.NA Cars, your ultimate destination for everything automotive.
I am your host, Diana Master. Teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Discover the latest models, innovative technologies, and expert insights from our passionate hosts. Learn essential maintenance tips and get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to the automotive industry. Don't miss My.NA Cars on NTV every Thursday at 2100 hours. Tune in and ignite your passion for automobiles.
Starting us off with our African news, at least 80 people were killed between Tuesday the 4th of May and Friday the 7th of May in attacks by Allied Democratic Forces, rebels in the villages of the Baswaga Madiwa Group Beni territory in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The attacks mainly happened on Friday night in the villages of Masala, Mapasana and Mahini and were attributed to the ADF, according to Lieutenant Colonel Mark Hazukai, an army spokesman in Congo's North Kivu province. These rebels also killed 30 other civilians in the past past 2 weeks. Since the 3rd of May, the Civil Society of Beni Territory reports that 123 civilians have been killed in various attacks attributed to ADF rebels. The ADF, which is now based in eastern Congo, has pledged allegiance to the Islamic State and mounts frequent attacks, further destabilizing a region where many militant groups are active. Getting into our next story, Uganda suffered a rare nationwide electricity blackout for several hours on Friday, its state-run power grid operator said, adding that electricity was gradually being restored late in the afternoon. The grid shutdown happened during the testing of a newly completed Chinese-built $1.5 billion 600-megawatt hydropower plant on the Nile River in the country's north, Uganda Electricity Transmission Company Limited said in a post on the X platform. In another post about 2 hours later, it said the grid had been restored partially. Uganda has an installed power generation capacity of 2,000 megawatts, according to the Energy Ministry. It generates more power than it consumes and has been exploring the possibility of exporting the surplus to neighbors like South Sudan and Kenya. Stick around. Right after this, we bring you our international news. Narendra Modi has been sworn in as India's Prime Minister for a third term after a shock election setback that will test his ability to ensure policy certainty in a coalition government in the world's most populous nation. India's President Draupadi Murmu administered the oath of office to Modi at a ceremony on Sunday at the Rashtrapati Bhavan, the President's Palace in New Delhi, attended by thousands of dignitaries, including the leaders of 7 neighboring countries, Bollywood stars and industrialists. Beachgoers in the Gulf Coast of Florida have been told to be vigilant after 3 swimmers were attacked by sharks in 2 separate attacks. One woman was said to have had part of her arm amputated after being bitten on Friday in Walton County in northwest Florida. Less than 2 hours later, at another beach 4 miles further east, 2 teenage girls were in waist-deep water with friends when they were attacked. One of the girls suffered significant injuries to the upper leg and one hand, while the other had minor injuries on one of her feet, fire officials said. Authorities have been patrolling the shoreline in boats and some beaches were closed, although they reopened on Saturday with purple flags warning of dangerous marine life. The first incident happened at around 1:20 p.m. local time on Friday when a woman about 45 years old was attacked near Watersound Beach, South Walton Fire District said. She suffered critical injuries to her hip and lower left arm and was airlifted to hospitals, fire officials added. Stick around. Right after the break, we bring you local and international sports news. Getting into our local sports news, Namibia's Brave Warriors in their World Cup qualifier campaign faced Tunisia on Sunday at the Orlando Stadium in South Africa. The game, which ended in a goalless draw, placed the Warriors in a good standing in their group with 8 points, just 2 short of group leaders Tunisia. Here's what Warriors head coach Colin Benjamin had to say in his post-match interview. We apologize for that. It seems we're experiencing some technical difficulties. Getting into our next story, the Namibia Eagles will regroup and reaffirm their determination of delivering the upsets they have become known for at the ICC T20 World Cup, despite the disappointment of Thursday night's loss to Scotland in Barbados. Namibia captain Gerard Erasmus scored 52 of 31 balls before getting stumped as Namibia posted 155 for 9 in their 20 overs. However, the Scotland team restricted them from achieving the acceleration in run rate they were striving for. Closing off our local sports stories, Athletics Namibia's Senior Commerce Championship was held in unfavorably chilly and windy conditions at the Independence Stadium in the capital on Saturday. Beatrice Masilingi took part in her first official athletics meeting after a long absence. World Athletics had cleared Masilingi earlier this month to participate in the 100 and 200 meter sprints. She went head-to-head with fellow 2021 Olympic finalist Christine Mboma in the 200 meter, along with Jade Nangula in the second and final heat. In the 100 meters, Mboma took the honors in 11.80 seconds, with Nangula second in 11.84 seconds, while Johanna Luderus ended third in 11.90 seconds. Stay with us. Right after this, we get into our international sports news. Sergio Perez will have a 3-place grid penalty at the next Formula One race in Spain after the Mexican drove his Red Bull in an unsafe condition at Sunday's Canadian Grand Prix. Champions Red Bull were also fined €25,000. Perez retired in the pits after driving around the track with a broken rear wing, shedding carbon fiber debris on his car following a crash into the barriers at Turn 6. Article 2610 of the sporting regulations says that if a driver has serious mechanical difficulties, he must leave the track as soon as it is safe to do so. Stewart said in a statement that Red Bull had confirmed at the hearing that Perez had been advised to bring the car back to the pits to avoid a potential safety car situation if he stopped on the track. The steward said a sporting penalty was needed in addition to the financial one due to the safety implications. Carlos Alcaraz said his maiden French Open triumph on Sunday was the proudest moment of his glittering career after the Spaniard became the youngest man to win Grand Slams on all 3 of the sport's surfaces following his Wimbledon and US Open titles. The 21-year-old beat German Alexander Zverev at Roland Garros to join an elite club that includes greats Mats Wilander, Jimmy Connors, Andre Agassi, Roger Federer, and Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic. But having arrived in Paris with barely any matches under his belt due to a right forearm injury, Alcaraz said his latest achievement was all the more special. If you're just joining us, this is NMH at 1, and we'll get into the highlights from today's broadcast right after this.
Hi Sonia.
Hi Tufini. What are you reading?
I'm reading about the Child Care and Protection Act in this pamphlet I got from school.
What's that?
It is Namibia's main law for the children and the issues affecting them. The Act classifies here that a child is anyone under the age of 18 years. Check out some of the rights meant to protect you. For more information, contact the Children's Advocate.
For more information, contact the Children's Advocate Namibia in the Office of the Ombudsman on 061 20 73 111. Send us an SMS on 20401. SMS costs 40 cents. You can also send us a message via our Facebook page. Remember, the services of the Children's Advocate are free of charge.
You're still with NMH at 1. For those of you that are just joining us, or for those of you that need a quick recap, let's take a look at the news highlights from today's broadcast. In African news, at least 80 people were killed between Tuesday the 4th of May and Friday the 7th of May in attacks by Allied Democratic Forces rebels. In international news, Narendra Modi has been sworn in as India's Prime Minister for a 3rd term after a shock election setback that will test his ability to ensure policy certainty in a coalition government in the world's most populous nation. And in local sports, Namibia's Brave Warriors in their World Cup qualifier campaign faced Tunisia on Sunday at the Orlando Stadium in South Africa. The game ended in a goalless draw. Do remember, NMH at 1 streams live every weekday at 1 p.m. sharing the latest news in Namibia and beyond. I am Diana Master and this has been NMH at 1. Have a lovely Monday ahead.